So, good morning and good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Jessup, and I am Chief of Advanced Reactor Licensing Branch 1 in the NRC's Office of Nuclear Reactor Regulation. I'm sorry I could not be there in person with you all today, but I greatly appreciate the opportunity to discuss some of the NRC's ongoing activities related to transformative advanced reactor regulation. I guess I want to note up front that I'll be making some references to several documents and initiatives during my presentation today. So please feel free to reach out at the end of the presentation if I can help you obtain any references that may be of interest to you all. So thank you for being on slide 2. So this slide provides an overview of the presentation that I'm going to give this morning. I wanted to start off with some high-level thoughts on the agency's vision and policy statements relative to advanced reactor regulation before I move into some of the more substantive topics on the agenda. And as you can likely surmise from the title of the presentation, I'm going to spend most of the time on one of the slides relative to the regulatory framework transformation, which kind of binds all of the activities that we're undertaking right now. So next slide, please, slide 3. Thank you. So I like to open up these presentations with our vision statement. For the past few years, the NRC has been transforming the way it does business to become a more modern, risk-informed regulator. And with all of the momentum around advanced reactors, we felt that we'd have an opportunity to impact society in a profoundly positive way. And in that regard, we're building our advanced reactor program around the vision of creating new paradigms to make the safe use of nuclear technology possible. And so our goal is to develop new ways to achieve our mission while we build on the strong foundation that served us to this point. And we're achieving this transformation by evolving many areas of our regulatory framework, including rules, guidance, programs, and tools. And I'll be talking about a lot of those this morning. Slide 4, please. Next slide. Thank you. So on this slide, I have an excerpt of the the Commission Policy Statement on the Regulation of Advanced Reactors. This policy statement was first issued in July 1986. It's been revised twice, once in 1994 and once in 2008. And this policy was issued for 3 reasons. One, it was to encourage early interaction between stakeholders involved in advanced reactor development, including the NRC and vendors. It provided the Commission's views regarding desired characteristics of advanced reactor designs. And it was also used to express the Commission's intent to engage on advanced reactor matters in a timely manner. And so we take this policy and we carry it forward today throughout our day-to-day activities. And I pulled out 2 key passages here that were included in the original policy statement, and they still exist in the most recent revision, with some emphasis added, because we're simultaneously ensuring that these new reactor designs are at least as safe as those used in the current generation, while acknowledging that there are some safety enhancements that convey with these new reactor designs. And a lot of what you'll hear in my subsequent slides certainly recognizes the second point that I've emphasized here, since our regulatory framework is evolving to recognize these safety enhancements. Next slide, please. Thank you. So I don't want to dwell on this slide too long, since this presentation is more forward-focused, but I did want to at least offer some perspective on the current regulatory framework that we're using and how it relates to our future licensing paradigm for advanced reactors. And so what you see on this slide are the 3 licensing pathways that we have or will have for advanced reactors in the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations. And so you see parts 50 and 52 are in use today, the left side and the center side, while part 53 is under development. And I'm going to revisit part 53 several times during the remainder of the presentation. But again, for some context, the part 50 pathway is characterized by a 2-step process where an applicant initially receives a construction permit to build the plant, followed by the second step, which is an operating license to operate the plant. Now, this Part 50 licensing pathway has been used to license almost all of the currently operating plants and non-power production and utilization facilities like university research reactors in the U.S. Part 52 in the center, that center pathway, this was introduced in 1989 primarily as a way to standardize the NRC's licensing processes. It has several different types of applications that can be pursued, most notably the 1-step combined license or COL process. The combined license, it combines that construction permit and operating license into a 1-step process, unlike in Part 50, like I mentioned, where the construction and operating license are issued in two parts. Other application types that can be pursued under Part 52, in addition to the combined license, include the early site permit, which is really where you have a site, but you don't know what plant you want to put on it. And then conversely, a design certification where you know what kind of plant you have, but you don't know where you want to put it yet. And there's also the standard design approval, and then the manufacturing license. The manufacturing license has been it's gained a lot of momentum lately with the interest in microreactors. So the manufacturing license application type is characterized by fabrication, construction of a plant in a location different from where it would actually be operated. Just some notes. The nation's newest nuclear plants in the US in Georgia were licensed under Part 52, and NuScale's small modular reactor design was recently certified using the Part 52 licensing pathway as well. And then on the right-hand side of the slide, again, is Part 53. As I noted, it's currently under development. It's going to provide a technology-inclusive, risk-informed, and performance-based licensing pathway for future commercial nuclear plants. And I'll get into some more details about Part 53 in the next couple of slides because it is important to this transformative framework that we're developing. And one point I like to make in this presentation as well is that while a lot of focus has been on Part 53 and some of the more innovative things we're doing around advanced reactors, Parts 50 and 52 remain viable licensing pathways today for near-term applicants that are using advanced reactor designs, so-called early movers. But the NRC recognizes that the existing regulations were largely developed over decades of experience with light water reactors. And in some cases, the regulations developed for these plants don't line up well with the next generation of nuclear plants, particularly non-light water reactors, with different design and operating philosophies. So next slide, please. Okay, great. So I've alluded to Part 53 a couple of times, the fact that it's currently under development. So from a status standpoint, the NRC staff has developed a draft proposed rule. What would Part 53 look like? That was submitted to the Commission in March 2023. The Commission is currently deliberating on it, and they'll provide the staff direction once they've completed their deliberation. But we strive to make it a technology-inclusive, risk-informed, performance-based pathway. And what do I mean by that? The technology inclusive means that we're developing it such that any type of technology could come into it and not have to take exemptions to the requirements. Today, a non-light water reactor could be licensed under Parts 50 or 52. We've had recent success with Kairos Hermes test reactor, a non-light water reactor. But again, the frameworks that we have today largely developed for the existing fleet. Risk informed. So we want to make sure that we're using tools on both the NRC and the applicant side that focus our limited resources on the aspects of a design that mean the most to safety. And then performance based. So specifying the end goal or the desired outcome instead of prescribing how to get there. In Part 53, it builds on a strong foundation of Commission rules, policies, and decisions on performance-based and risk-informed regulations. The draft proposed rule that the staff developed, it embodies a risk-informed framework, and it capitalizes on the progress in state-of-the-art and probabilistic risk assessment, or PRA. The PRA is really a centerpiece of what we're trying to do in Part 53 and other elements of our advanced reactor regulatory framework. The rule minimizes the licensing basis change process into a more risk-informed approach. And I'll get into this in the next slide as well, but it also features a consequence-oriented regulatory framework by leveraging alternative emergency preparedness and security requirements that reflect the facility's potential risk to public health and safety. And further, it affords designers and operators enhanced flexibility by enabling, reactor design with demonstrated safety attributes to leverage safety margin and gaining that operational flexibility. And so overall, Part 53, what the draft proposed rule put forward, it strives to strike a balance between flexibility and predictability by focusing on those performance-based requirements and risk-informed techniques. So next slide, please. Thank you. So this slide is kind of the centerpiece of this presentation, so I'm going to spend some time on it. The NRC recognizes that new reactor designs, they have innovative means of accomplishing safety and security functions. And as I noted previously, we also recognize that we have to transform our regulatory framework in a way that acknowledges these design differences. So on this slide, you see many, but not all, of the current NRC initiatives that are going on to support advanced reactor licensing. Many of these are policy efforts. Some are in place now, some are in progress, many with the commission for their consideration. But I want to go around this kind of wheel here and highlight some of these initiatives. And so I've already talked about Part 53. I'll come back to it in a minute. But I guess I'll start with emergency preparedness. So the NRC recognized that existing emergency preparedness regulations and guidance are primarily focused on large light water reactors and non power reactors. So the NRC developed an alternative emergency preparedness, or EP, framework for small modular reactors and other new technologies. And that was documented most recently in SECI paper 22-01. And the commission recently approved that for publication as a final rule in a new section of the regulations that should be issued early next year. The rule has four major provisions related to emergency preparedness for new reactors, but the centerpiece of the rule was the establishment of a scalable approach for determining the size of the plume exposure pathway emergency planning zone, or EPZ. I'll use that EPZ acronym a couple of times. So the EPZ for the current operating fleet of nuclear power reactors, it consists typically of an area about 10 miles or 16 kilometers in radius, and the ingestion planning zone, or IPZ, consists of an area about 50 miles or 80 kilometers in radius. That standard 10-mile, 16-kilometer EPZ and 50-mile or 80-kilometer IPZ may not be necessary to ensure public health and safety for these newer designs, these advanced reactors that are characterized by slower transient response times and relatively small and slow releases of fission products. So the NRC's alternative EP framework, it relies on a consequence-oriented approach that, provided certain criteria are met, could actually result in an emergency planning zone that's limited to the site boundary, depending on accident likelihood and source term, timing of the accident sequences, and meteorology that's assumed at the time the event occurs. Um, some other notable items that are on here: advanced reactor siting. So kind of at the 5 o'clock on this oval here. So the existing guidance that the NRC has on siting reactors, again, it was developed largely for the existing fleet of large light water reactors. We're currently revising that guidance, which is in Regulatory Guide 4.7, to provide a technology inclusive, risk informed, and performance based approach to assessing population related issues for siting advanced reactors. That current, excuse me, that current guidance indicates that the siting requirements in our Part 100 can be met by ensuring that reactors are sited such that the population density doesn't exceed 500 persons per square mile out to 20 miles from the reactor. The draft guidance that we've revised or plan to revise, it provides an alternative approach for meeting those same siting regulations, again, that focuses on the consequences to drive decisions regarding siting. That is, the draft guidance we're proposing doesn't rely on a prescriptive distance and population density criteria, but rather it focuses on the consequences of postulated accidents to determine the appropriate siting for a proposed reactor. That guidance is actually in draft form and it's out for public comment right now. And I think the public comment period ends on November 17th. So again, a very active policy effort going on there. Physical security. So I'm jumping around a bit and I apologize, but I do want to make sure I hit some of the highlights. So the NRC recognizes that design attributes of advanced reactors may justify less reliance on human actions, such as those provided by armed responders during attempts to steal special nuclear material or sabotage a plant. So the NRC's draft proposed rule for revising the regulations, primarily in 10 CFR Part 73, offer voluntary performance-based alternatives for meeting certain physical security requirements for advanced reactors. That draft proposed rule, like Part 53, is currently with the Commission for their consideration. And so we'll move forward on that once we get further direction from the Commission. Fuel qualification. It's a process that confirms whether fuel can be manufactured and perform as designed. It's often a multi-year process, and can be one of the longest lead time activities for reactors, advanced or otherwise. In March 2022, the NRC issued guidance in the form of New Reg 2246, New Reg 2246, that recognizes the significance of this issue for advanced reactor design and licensing. And the approach that we outlined in New Reg 2246 for advanced reactors, it represents a new top-down, technology-inclusive approach where the safety importance of the fuel for a given reactor design is considered as part of the review. And we've already seen some success with New Reg 2246 in our licensing activities based on some of the fuel qualification topical reports and white papers that have been submitted for review from the various vendors that we work with. And then I want to talk about two items here kind of coupled together. So the Licensing Modernization Project, or LMP as we call it most often, it's been endorsed for use by the NRC, endorsed in our regulatory guide 1.233. The design and licensing methodology embedded in LMP, it uses a risk-informed, performance-based approach to select licensing basis events, develop structure systems and components categorization approach, and ensure that defense in depth is considered adequately. And so again, like the other items I've mentioned with the LMP, we see another paradigm shift. We see another paradigm shift away from the largely deterministic approaches that were used in the design and licensing of the currently operating fleet of large light water reactors. And as I mentioned with fuel qualification, we're working with several vendors right now that are exercising portions of the licensing modernization project as part of pre-application engagement efforts. And it's very interesting to watch as we all gain more experience with practical implementation of the licensing modernization project. And I think one of the last items I would mention here is what's called TCAP and RCAP, kind of at the 4 o'clock on this oval. So RCAP is called the Advanced Reactor Content of Application Project. And this provides guidance for developing and reviewing technology-inclusive, risk-informed, and performance-based non-light water reactor applications. And when you compare that to the NRC's guidance, similar guidance for light water reactors in our standard review plan, the format of the RCAP is much more streamlined and risk-informed. And in general, that risk-informed nature is really important, and it stands out because it clearly focuses on the risk-significant items and not so much emphasis on the portions of a plant that don't contribute to safety. And so currently, we are reviewing public comments that were received on the draft RCAP interim staff guidance documents and the TCAP, or Technology Inclusive Content of Application Project draft guide that have been issued for public comment. And we expect to issue final versions of those within the next several months for use. And so I would kind of bring all these things together. I know I didn't hit all these, but I'll come back to the top of Part 53. And I alluded to the fact that I would keep coming back to this. And so I just want to kind of reiterate again that we see Part 53 as a key element of the broader transformative regulatory framework. And if you look at the draft proposed version of Part 53 that the NRC staff provided to the Commission for its consideration in March this year, you'll see a lot of the items that I've already discussed on this slide that are folded into that rule. So emergency preparedness and security alternatives, concepts from the licensing modernization project, risk-informed change processes, and several other topics that aren't even captured on this slide, like innovative approaches to operator licensing that we recognize are going to be critical and likely warranted for some of the advanced reactor designs. And again, I'll reiterate as well, the Commission's currently evaluating the staff's draft proposed rule for Part 53, and we'll move forward based on the direction they provide once they've completed their deliberations. And so collectively, what these represent are the NRC's efforts to take a more risk-informed, performance-based, and technology-inclusive approach to the regulation of advanced reactors, recognizing the fact that the design and operation of these facilities is a paradigm shift away from the facilities that we're used to licensing and overseeing. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so here on slide 8, I wanted just to provide a licensing status update. So the NRC is engaged with several prospective applicants that intend to employ a variety of new reactor technologies, molten salt reactors, high temperature gas reactors, liquid metal fast reactors like sodium, and microreactors. We employ several different tools to support pre-application engagement with prospective vendors. That includes public meetings, the reviews of white papers and topical reports. White papers being less formal will provide quick turnaround feedback. When topical reports are submitted, we develop a safety evaluation that can be used in future interactions. To date, we've completed 80 topical report and white paper reviews from 7 vendors. We have 29 topical reports and white papers under review right now from 8 vendors. And so there's a lot of activity going on right now in the pre-application space where vendors are interested in NRC feedback. They want to get a head start on the licensing process, and we are actively supporting that. And next slide, please. Okay, thank you. And this is kind of a different version of the slide that I just went through. So I just wanted to show some of the license application reviews that we have going on right now. So currently we have 5 licensing actions under review with various vendors pursuing new and advanced reactor and related applications. So for Kairos, we are reviewing 2 test reactor construction permit applications. For NuScale, we're reviewing a standard design approval for their light water small modular reactor. The Shine Medical radioisotope facility operating license application is still with us. Abilene Christian University, we're reviewing the construction permit application for their molten salt research reactor. And then I put X Energy's TRISO X. It's a fuel fabrication facility, so not necessarily an advanced reactor per se, but certainly it has a direct nexus on advanced reactor technologies. And then in the lower box, you see all of the vendors that we are engaging with, and you see some overlap there. But we are engaging with so many vendors right now, again, in pre-application space. And I would just point out the bottom box, it's not an exhaustive list of all potential applications. Instead, it's just here to demonstrate the scale of industry interest in submitting license applications. Next slide, please. Thank you. And so this is my last slide. And with this slide, I just wanted to take an opportunity to reinforce that public interaction is a core component to the NRC's mission. And we're focused on ensuring that the agency's business is conducted in an open and transparent manner. As these advanced reactor technologies are brought to the NRC, we put a lot of effort into ensuring that the public's opinion is recognized prior to making critical decisions. Our efforts to engage with external stakeholders, including the general public, they start with guidance document development, where we develop those with input from both the industry, the regulated, and the general public and other external stakeholders. These guidance documents are used extensively by both the industry and NRC during pre-application and application engagements. During pre-application engagement, so kind of that right-hand bubble there, we make external stakeholders aware of all the various applicant NRC meetings and pre-application submittals. Many of the meetings we hold are open to the public for observation or engagement, and we strive to publicly release all non-proprietary, otherwise non-sensitive information that we get. And then once the formal application review begins, the public's input is requested prior to making licensing decisions. We post notifications in the Federal Register indicating opportunities for public engagement like hearings. These hearings are currently required at certain points in the licensing process, such as prior to issuance of a construction permit. We actually just completed one for the Kairos Hermes 1 test reactor on October 19th. And finally, most documents that we do use in licensing activities are available on the NRC's website. And again, any of those documents or anything I've referenced during this presentation today, I'm glad to support anyone's request for finding those documents on the website as well. So you can go to the next slide, which is the last slide. And yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity to present today. I think there's some time left for question and answer period, but otherwise I'm always reachable and glad to always answer questions on the NRC's advanced reactor activities. So thank you again.
ありがとうございました。それでは今ご質問をお受けしますとおっしゃってくださいましたので、会場内ご質問ございましたらスタッフがマイクをお持ちいたします。恐れ入りますが挙手でお知らせいただけますでしょうか。いかがでしょうか。
Can you hear me? Okay. Question about NRC staffing with all of these different projects. That's quite a departure from LWR knowledge base. I'm wondering about the NRC's ability to maintain the human resources to evaluate the various projects.
No, thank you for the question. It comes up quite often. So we are staffing aggressively. We also are focused on prioritizing work appropriately. The Office of Nuclear Reactor Regulation, is staffed with many folks with a lot of experience. Certainly, I think one of the points you're making is that these are some of these technologies can be novel, but there's experience out there. And we also undertake a lot of training as well. We have a lot of in-house training, and we get on-the-job experience as well. So we are getting staffed up, and we're ready to support license application reviews, and we have been supporting all pre-application engagements as well. So, but certainly a popular topic, not just within the NRC, but I think the industry as a whole.
ありがとうございます。その他ご質問いかがでしょうか。皆様よろしいでしょうか。それではご質問内容でございますので、ジェサップ様の講演は以上で終了させていただきたいと思います。改めまして本日オンラインでご講演いただきましたジェサップ様に大きな拍手をお送りください。ありがとうございました。Thank you very much.
Thank you.